Yeah, hello again and welcome to the next video clips about transaction processing. Transaction processing is a really important kind of processing, especially in the mainframe area. And let's first take a short overview where transaction processing is located when we talk about data processing. So data processing is a general idea of processing data electronically, and we distinguish batch workloads, especially in the mainframe area. Batch workloads are very important, and on the other side we have interactive workloads. And when we talk about interactive workloads, there are two general processing possibilities. We can use time sharing, as example TSO in a COS environment, or CMS in a virtual machine environment. And on the other side, and this is where I now concentrate on, is OLTP. OLTP abbreviation for online transaction processing, sometimes called online, sometimes called transaction processing, and sometimes just called OLTP, as the abbreviation I mentioned just. And so we have in general three basic different workloads in the mainframe environment. It's a workload of batch processing, it's a workload of time sharing, and the third workload we concentrate now on is workload online. Online means transaction processing. When we talk about transaction processing, a typical example for doing a transaction is a transfer from money from a bank account A to a bank account B. We have different steps that are necessary to fulfill this task. We subtract the amount from account A, we add the amount to an account B, and we have to do some bookkeeping. And these steps belong to one transaction and may only be executed all together or not at all. So again, these three steps: subtract the amount from account A, add the amount to account B, and do the bookkeeping. And we start the work with a begin statement, means now a transaction begins, and at the end we have a so-called commit. Commit means now the transaction is fulfilled, and all these steps are defined as a logical unit of work. And it's really important that this logical unit of work may be only executed at all or not at all. And to manage this kind of workload, we have so-called ACID characteristics. Maybe you heard of it already. It's, in my opinion, it's really important to understand what ACID characteristics mean. First, is atomicity, means that each transaction is treated as a single unit. I just showed the logical unit of work, which either succeeds complete or fail completely. This is important to understand. Second thing is consistency, ensures that a transaction will bring the database from one definite state to another. And the third is isolation. Isolation has to do with concurrency in such an environment. Means that we have a lot of activities in parallel, and each activity has treated by its own. So the isolation is a very important characteristic to fulfill within transaction environments. And the last thing is durability. Durability guarantees that when a transaction has been completed, it will remain committed. It means if there is some interruption after the transaction was committed, and we have some problems with the database or wherever, all the activities have to be redone to fulfill the durability characteristic. Important to compare it to other kind of processings, especially when it comes today to big data work and something like this. Big data normally doesn't support these ACID characteristics, and this is important for especially critical transactions like we do in financial environments or wherever. In the past, at times, we can call it the good old mainframe. The distinction was very easy. Database management systems and databases manages data in databases, and TP monitors deal with transactions. Now in 1986, Sybase came up with the idea of integrating transactions functionality into their database management system. So that's where stored procedures came up and triggers were invented. A very important technique to be used today in such environments. And now we have to distinguish between TP Lite and TP Heavy. TP Lite is the transaction processing where the transaction functionality is included into the database management system, and TP Heavy is where we have separately transaction managed by a transaction processing environment. We call it transaction monitors or transaction monitoring. A transaction manager or TP monitor controls transactions and all processing that has to be done in such an environment, and all the components that are included in this transaction processing are controlled by a transaction manager, and it has much more functionality than the transaction characteristics that are built with TP Lite into database management environments. So normally in mainframe environments, in fact, we have transaction monitors, and if we talk about environments within COS, we have normally installed KICS or CICS or how it is pronounced. There is a lot of discussion about pronouncing this abbreviation. In Germany, normally we say KICS. This stands for Customer Information Control System. It's the most important transaction monitor. And there's a second one in the COS environment. This is IMS TM. TM stands for Transaction Monitor. So when we talk about IMS, we have two big components. One is the IMS DB. It's a hierarchical database we already mentioned in the video clips before. And TM stands for Transaction Monitor. This is the Transaction Monitor component of IMS. We talk about both of them during the next few video clips. Thank you very much and have fun with transaction management.